Hey everyone, and welcome back to my June wrap-up. So today I want to talk about all the books that I've read in June, and I think we should start without a very long intro. The first book I finished in June was this graphic memoir called Heimat, a German family album by Nora Krug. This is a graphic memoir by a German author and illustrator who moved to the US when she was studying and then stayed there to work. And in this memoir, she's looking back on her family history, which is very similar to a lot of German families' histories, because we always have to deal with the fact that some parts of family were involved in the Nazi regime and the Second World War. And so Nora Krug sets out to explore to what extent her family was actually involved. So for her, that includes her grandparents as well as one uncle that she never met because he was killed in the Second World War. And I thought this was such an interesting read, especially if you are from Germany, because it is such a relatable experience. I found that a lot of the feelings that are portrayed in here are definitely feelings I have had before as well. I'm very much interested in history and especially family history as well. So this was really fun to see, like someone doing a deep dive into this family history. I myself don't really know a lot about what my family did during and after the Second World War. It's very usual that there is this big silence, people don't talk about it. Like you will never hear your grandparents actually say, what it was like. Now, my grandparents were all born during the 40s, so they didn't really experience any of the Nazi regime per se. My oldest grandfather just got into school right when the war ended. So, that's a little bit of a different perspective, but still, my grandparents don't really talk about it and the role that their parents might have played as well. So this was really, really good to read for a German audience, but I think it can also be interesting if you are interested in that German experience. And I've said in my vlog that I can totally understand when people say that they don't care because obviously historically that would be totally acceptable to be like, who cares about the Germans during the Second World War? They started it. And that's fine, that's totally fine. But if you are interested in that very unique experience of having this like big silence in your family about a certain period of time where horrible things happened, then this might be an interesting book to pick up. And it is stunning. So it has this kind of scrapbooky style. There's like very German items that are portrayed, but they also tie into the story a little bit and stuff like that. So very beautiful, and I really loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. Then the next book I finished was The Henna Boys by Adiba Jaigirdar. Now this is a completely different book. I wanted something light and fluffy, so I thought 2 girls falling in love in Ireland might be good. But this book has a lot of content warnings, and I would definitely take them seriously because this book is much heavier in tone than I thought it would be. Basically, we are following Nishat, who is a student. Her parents are from Bangladesh, and she's in a certain age range where they have this big project in their school, and she wants to start a henna business for that. But her arch nemesis is also starting a henna business with the help of their cousin, and that is Flavia. And now Flavia is from Brazil and she's black, and that's the 2 girls on the cover, Nishat and Flavia, and they do have somewhat of a romance, but I wouldn't expect too much. There's only a few like quite romantic scenes in here, but this is just much deeper. It obviously deals with being queer when you're from an immigrant and Muslim family, and going to an Irish school when you're queer, which is also not very welcoming, I guess, at least the way it is portrayed here. And it deals with cultural appropriation because this arch nemesis is kind of stealing henna and the like cultural idea that comes with it from Nishat in a way. So yeah, it deals with all of these topics. It gets very emotional and at times very hard to read, and it also has very complex family dynamics because we see a lot of Nishat's family. Her little sister is very supportive, but also in some instances just still a teenager, and she doesn't always make the best choices. And then Nishat's parents don't really support her queerness, and that is very, very hard to read as well. But yeah, overall, I did enjoy this. I think I gave it 4 stars, but as I said, I would go into this with a little bit more caution. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, The Hacienda, and this is by Isabel Canas. Now, this book is a new release, and it is compared to Mexican Gothic, which was also a book that was kind of disappointing for me. So I thought I'd give it a try, but I was kind of hesitant about it. I do love a good horror story, but these kind of like Gothic tales are not always my favorite. They're practically never my favorite. I don't know. So in the Hacienda, we follow a woman who marries a man from a kind of opposing political party, or whatever you want to call that. It is set in, I think, the 1800s, 19th century, during and after the Mexican War of Independence. And this woman marries this man because she needs safety, and his wealth is just offers the chance to protect her. And so she moves to his hacienda, and he goes back to the city to do his political stuff while she stays there. And she stays there with his sister, so her sister-in-law, but the sister-in-law doesn't go into the house. And while this main character, whose name I completely forgot right now, is in the house, horrible things start to happen. Now in this book we also get a second point of view, which is a priest, and this priest has a history with the house, and he decides to try to help our main character with whatever is going on. So I think this book has all the like classic tropes of this Gothic genre. I did like the setting of Mexico, but I didn't feel like I've learned anything from the book that is like, Mexican history or something like that, because I was like really intrigued by that idea of the Mexican War of Independence, but that isn't really the focus here. So it's definitely the house and what's going on with the house. I found the conclusion to be just a bit sad and uncreative. I wanted more from it. But what I did like about this book was the romantic tension. I think that it had much better romance than Mexican Gothic did, but then it wasn't as creative when it comes to the resolution at the end. So at the end, I decided to give it 3.5 stars. It wasn't the worst book in the world, but I just wanted more from it. The next book I then finished was Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This was the last finished full-length novel of hers I hadn't read yet. In this one we follow a girl called Fanny, who is kind of adopted by her aunts and uncle because her own mother didn't really marry well and now her family is not well off. So her aunts and uncle decide to take her in so she has a better chance at life. But they don't really integrate her into their family, and so she's always a little bit of the outsider, but she has a good friend in her cousin. I think his name is Edward. Don't see it right now, but I'm pretty sure it's Edward. So this is kind of a coming-of-age novel. It's not like a romance in the sense that the other Austen novels are, and because of that I found it to be a little bit more boring. Fanny also is a character that I had some issues with. She is a very, very goody, very, very good girl. She's doing what she's told. She has very strong values that she's holding others to as well. And I found that to be a little bit of a boring main character just because, our values have changed quite a lot from that time. And yeah, Fanny is just very quiet and she can get very... what do you call that in English? Just like flustered when people don't adhere to her values and stuff like that. There is some fun things happening, like there's one scene where they try to put on a theater play, there's a ball, but that's only just a tiny scene. And what I found interesting is when she's actually sent back to her family, and yeah, she kind of sees what she has missed basically. So the way she has grown up in this very wealthy household has protected her from some things, or just, yeah, changed her in a way that she doesn't really fit into her own family also. So that was kind of interesting. The romancy bit at the end I did not like. So overall I gave this 3.5 stars, and I think this is my second least favorite Austen, to be honest. Then the next book I finished was a reread, and that was My Lady Jane by Cynthia and Jodi Ashton and Brodi Meadows. Jodi Meadows and Brodi Ashton. I always get it wrong, I'm sorry. This is the first book in the Lady Janie series. It was a re-listen for me. It's one of my favorite audiobooks of the whole world, and I was so happy to listen to this again. It was exactly the right choice. In this one we follow Jane, who was queen for a couple of days. So this is actually based on a real character that, or a real person that existed in history. But our character Jane is a little bit different because we have some fantasy elements in this historical fiction. Because in this world there is people who can turn into animals, and they're called Ethians. And so Jane is just minding her own business when there is kind of a marriage plot, and she gets married off to a guy she doesn't really know. He's an Ethian. He turns into a horse, so he's a horse at day and a man at night. And he doesn't really have any control over it, which is unusual because a lot of Ethians can actually control their transformations. And this is basically a retelling of the English history after Henry VIII. So we have his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, and we have his son Edward. And Edward is king when we start the story, but we see that something's not quite right with him. So Edward is one of the characters, Jane is the other one of the main characters, and then we get the horse guy's perspective. So we have three perspectives that we follow. It's very funny. It's exactly my kind of humor. It starts with the sentence that this book is for everyone who knew that there was enough room on the door for Jack. So yeah, this was the moment when I knew I would love the book, when that was the first sentence. I think it's very quirky, weird humor, but my kind of humor. So I gave that one 4.5 on re-listen again. Absolutely love that book. And then staying with the happy and funny theme, I read Dead Man in the Ditch by Luke Arnold. This is the second book in this series following Fetch Phillips, and series is also called like Fetch Phillips, I think. And this is a fantasy series, but it has this kind of detective feel to it, because in this one we follow a character who's kind of, yeah, the man for everything. He helps people with their problems, and the problems are big because in this world magic has been destroyed. Humans destroyed the magic, and now all magic beings don't have their magic anymore and are slowly suffering, dying, stuff like that. And yeah, in this world we're basically follow Fetch trying to figure out crimes. This is the second book in that series, so I would highly recommend starting with the first one, The Last Smile in Sunder City, which I had read earlier this year. But I did actually like this a little bit more, I think, because in the first one we still have a lot of flashbacks, which we don't really need anymore in this book. So in this one we can fully concentrate on the case. And there's actually some of Fetch's own history coming back in this case. And so it was a very emotional ride, even though the overall kind of feel of the book is humorous. I still felt like there were quite a few like very heartbreaking moments, but they usually just glossed over a little bit, so it's not like super sad. But yeah, it was quite an emotional journey to read this book. And in this one, he is trying to figure out a murder that looks like it could have only been done with magic. So yeah, people are still hoping that magic might come back one day. And that's kind of the overall theme of these books. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's a very solid series, and I'm looking forward to the 3rd book, which is already out. And then I finished a book that I did a whole reading vlog for, and that is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is one of the 5 books I wanted to read this year to finally try a new author, because Octavia E. Butler has been on my list to finally read for a very, very long time. So I thought, just sit down and do it this year. And I'm very happy that I did, because this book turned out to be a 5-star read for me. And now Kindred follows a woman called Dana. She lives in the 70s. She is black, but she's married to a white man, and they move into a new house, and suddenly she starts feeling very dizzy, and then she is suddenly transported back into slavery time, where a young boy is drowning, and she decides to save that boy. He's a white boy. So she is figuring out that this boy is actually her ancestor, and if she doesn't save him, her family will never exist. So Dana is obviously in a huge dilemma, because she has to save the slave owner who will eventually probably rape one of her black ancestors to create her family. And yeah, it's just as horrible as it sounds. You have a very deep look into slavery times, how horrible it was. And with Dana, you have a main character who is actually a modern day woman. So yeah, you have her perspective on how horrible that time was, but also her surprise to find that you can actually get used to this time. And it was just phenomenal. I gave it 5 stars. As I said, I absolutely loved it, and I would highly recommend. It's one of those page turners that you just want to get through, that you can't put down, because you know that the only way for it to be over is to get through it. And yeah, I was just so intrigued by it. At the same time horrified, but I knew I had to follow Dana until the end. So loved that. And then the last book I finished in June was very different, but I also gave it 5 stars, and that was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a book that has been practically everywhere. Everyone has read it and raved about it, but this is a kind of cozy fantasy. It follows an orc called Viv, and she has decided that she had enough of killing and fighting and going on quests. So she takes the money she has earned during her career, and she follows a kind of magical stone to a place where she will open her own coffee shop. And of course, at first people are a little bit concerned and a little bit confused what a coffee shop is, but it doesn't take long for it to be kind of a success. And because of one magical stone, all the right people get sucked into this business, and it's so cute, it's so adorable. I really like Viv as a main character, because you can really feel for her. You can really feel that she's just done with the world and she wants to find her happy place. But then there's all of these amazing side characters like Kel and the cat, and obviously the like kind of love interest and stuff like that, and just old friends, new friends. It's amazing. It's so great. The rat, the baking rat is amazing. It's so great. So if you need a hug right now, definitely listen to this book, because that's basically what it is. It is a big hug from a big orc woman who sells coffee and has amazing friends. So yeah, I would highly recommend. It's unfortunately quite a short book, but it made me very happy, and there was nothing I would have changed about this book. The ending does get a little bit heartbreaking as well, but yeah, overall positive feelings, warm hug, nice coffee, fantastic cat. So you need to listen to this as soon as possible. So that was all the books that I have read in June. It was actually quite a lot. I didn't think it would be that many, but yeah, somehow I did that. And yeah, let me know what your favorite book of the month was. I would be very interested in that. And leave a like or nice comment. Always appreciate it. And if you subscribe, I will talk to you soon. Bye!